Hello. Today we are going to be talking about how to effectively manage cash flow in your painting business, especially this time of year, end of September, heading into the fall, typically a slower period for a lot of painting contractors. This is a very important topic for us to discuss as we head into the slower months, making sure that we are managing our cash flow wisely. My name is Benson Fector. I'm with Legacy Paint Holdings. If you are a painting contractor that is doing more than $1 million a year, we would love to partner with you. Please visit our website, legacypaintholdings.com, and you can schedule your call there today. Let's jump on in. So the first thing I want to talk about is understanding cash inflows and outflows. Obviously, when we think about cash flow, it's money that's coming in and it's money that's going out, and that cash flow number is whatever is left over at the end of the week, month, year, whatever time period we are looking at here. Now, there are three things that we are mainly going to look at. The first thing is that you need to be tracking every transaction that you are doing as a painting contractor. And all of this starts with having a really good accounting software to record all of your income and your expenses. My personal recommendation is QuickBooks. Very, very cheap for the solo entrepreneur out there, or if you have a little bit of a bigger painting business, might cost you a little bit extra, but we're still in that $100 or less a month range, a very valuable tool. Also within QuickBooks, you can connect your QuickBooks account to your business bank account. Every transaction can come in and you can categorize your transactions from there. Make sure you're not missing anything. This is very, very important as you are talking about cash flow, that you understand every transaction that you are doing as a business owner. One of the important things here with tracking every transaction is you need to separate your personal expenses from your business expenses. Don't be using your business card to go buy groceries for you and your family. Use your business card at Sherwin-Williams, Home Depot to buy lunch for your guys. Do not separate or do not have the business and the personal be together. Make sure they are separated. And also, whether it's yourself or a bookkeeper, spend some time on the accounting. Very important. Next thing for understanding your cash inflows and outflows is you need to be categorizing your expenses into two different categories. You're going to have your fixed costs, think rent and salaries, and your variable costs, supplies and utilities. This will allow you to better predict your cash flow because you can work off the foundation of your fixed costs, and then your variable costs will be on top of those. And then finally, you need to be monitoring your payment terms. You need to understand when money is actually coming in. When you invoice a client at the end of a job, how long does it typically take for them to pay you? You need to have that average number is. And in QuickBooks, the nice thing is there's something called an accounts receivable aging report where you can go into your QuickBooks account and see specifically how long people are taking to pay you, which will give you a better picture of your cash flow position. The second thing is we need to, now that we understand inflows and outflows and what cash flow actually is we need to talk about how you are going to create what's called a cash flow forecast. These forecasts are very important and need to be something that you are regularly doing as a business owner. The first part of creating this cash flow forecast is we need to be using historical data. It's very, very easy, whether it's in QuickBooks, if you already have your accounting software set up, or you pull out your bank statements. Simply look at your past few months, or if you have years worth of data, understand what is coming in, what is going out, and what cash is left over, and get whatever that average number is. Now, ideally, if you've been in business for a few years, you understand here is what a typical October is for me. Here's what the last 5 Octobers have looked like. So you can get a better picture versus going into October, looking at numbers from June, which, as we all know, is typically a busier month in the painting industry than October tends to be. The second thing you need to do is create a budget with looking at what are my upcoming expenses and what is my upcoming revenue. So pay attention to those seasonal trends. When does your slowdown typically happen? If you're up north or in a seasonal area where it does get colder this time of year, then you need to be making sure that you see, okay, what month at what point do I slow down? And prepare for that point. And then on the inverse of that, when we get closer to the summer, March, April, May, when do I start to pick up? And you can predict a seasonal trend based off of that information. The second thing is looking at new contracts. If you have a good project management tool, you will be able to see what specifically in terms of your unbilled value is coming up for the following week, month, and just in general. And then finally, what are your expected increases in cost or your expected increases in sales, right? Sherwin-Williams, for example, will say, hey, we have a 5% increase in our paint cost starting on October 15th. It is going to be important for you to factor that into what you are doing so that when we're looking at our cash flow forecast, a 10% bump in paint costs is not going to sink us. And then obviously when it comes to sales, thinking about, okay, we have this $40,000 contract coming in. How are we going to monitor that and put that into our cash flow forecast? Finally, this cash flow forecast should be something that you are updating on a regular basis. Every single month you need to be creating this to understand your inflows, understand your outflows, and finally understand what that cash flow is looking like on a month-to-month basis. This isn't something that you do once a year or once a quarter. All right, now that we understand what the inflows and outflows are looking like, we understand what the cash flow forecast is, how to create it. Now, what are some tips for staying in the green and maintaining positive cash flow? The first thing is you need to be invoicing immediately. You would be surprised the number of painting contractors that I talk to that for whatever reason don't get around to invoicing for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days after they've completed a job. When you get a signed contract, invoice for your deposit. When you finish a project, invoice immediately for the total balance. And if you're doing pay applications in between, make sure you're invoicing right away. This needs to be a top priority because this is how you get your cash. There's no other way this cash is coming in, and this will prevent delayed payments coming in. The second thing is you should be offering incentives. When you go to that accounts receivable aging report and look at what the average time for somebody to pay you is, you want to put an incentive in place to get the cash sooner. Cash today is more valuable than cash in 2 weeks. So we want to put an incentive in place for someone to pay today versus 2 weeks from today. So if you have net 15 payment terms or net 30 payment terms, you can put a 5% discount on if they pay within 7 days of receiving the invoice, or however you want to structure it. But I highly recommend having this in place so you can get your cash right away and again, put it to use today instead of worrying about collecting it tomorrow. And finally, you need to be negotiating payment terms. If you don't already have a credit account opened up with Sherwin-Williams or your paint store, go down there today and file an application to get that opened up and work with your sales rep to negotiate favorable payment terms so that you are not out all of your materials costs when you haven't even collected money for the job, especially if you're not invoicing immediately and you don't have favorable payment terms at Sherwin. You're going to be doing the classic contractor rob Peter to pay Paul all day, and we need to be avoiding that and creating a cash flow situation that has that in place. Now, our next thing to talk about is the importance of an emergency fund. So we understand what cash flow is. We've created a cash flow forecast. We now know how to maintain a positive cash flow, but now we need to plan for a rainy day. What happens in case of an emergency? Because it's not if an emergency hits or if a downturn hits, it is when that is going to come, and it is imperative that you are planning for this in advance. So the first thing that you need to do is set aside 10% of your profits. Now, you're not going to know what your profits are if we're not doing the basics in terms of creating a cash flow forecast. So whatever that number is, set aside 10% of your profits each month into an emergency savings account so that when the unexpected times come, you have money ready to go rather than having to take out the credit card or go to the bank to get a loan. The second thing you need to do is set up an automated savings plan with your bank. There are a ton of banking features out there that you can automatically have money coming in, go into an emergency account. So it's not even something you have to think about. It is simply on autopilot. It's a lot easier to have money already in a separate account than it is going to be to sort of force yourself to put money aside. And finally, we need to be setting aside 3 to 6 months of expenses. It needs to be at least 3, ideally 6. And what this will allow you to do is when there are unexpected downturns or there are slow periods, which we all experience them, you have cash there ready to go versus having to rely on any other sort of methods here. Finally, I want to talk about strategies for managing slow periods in business, because it's not an if, it's a when, and we need to utilize the high periods in order to plan for the slow periods. If you're going through it right now, all of this will be helpful for you. If you're in a high season right now, make sure that you are planning today so that when tomorrow comes, you're not in a bad position. And again, painting the whole picture here of understanding cash flow, to creating the cash flow forecast, to maintaining a positive cash flow, having an emergency fund to the side. Now, what do we do when slow periods come? The first thing that you should consider doing is diversifying your services. If you are just doing painting, add an additional service, whether that's pressure washing or drywall or patio sealing, or if it's getting near Christmas time, doing Christmas lights. Whatever you can do to bring money in, you need to do for yourself, for your family, and for your employees. Diversify your services. Remodeling is also a very popular one here. The second thing I'm going to want you to do is cut out all unnecessary expenses. Look at your cash flow forecast. Look at your expenses that are coming out. And outside of the fixed costs, look at your variable costs and see if you can cut them out. We need to preserve cash in slow periods because cash is king, and cash is how we use it as a life raft to get out of these situations. And finally, above all, we need to increase your marketing efforts. And this is why you have cash set aside. Because if you go through a slow period of time and you don't have money to spend, then you're not going to have money to market. Use your emergency fund to boost your social media campaigns, optimize your search engine optimization, and create partnerships with real estate agents, contractors, GCs, roofers, landscapers, you name it, to generate leads for future growth. And if you do all of this, your slow periods are going to be lesser. The painting world is like a roller coaster ride. We have our highs and we have our lows. During the highs, you need to be planning and keeping guard for the lows, and we want to minimize those low periods and those slow periods when they come. So thank you for watching this video on how to effectively manage cash flow in a painting business. We typically put out a few of these educational videos a week here on the Legacy Paint Holdings accounts, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, etc. Again, if you are a painting contractor that is doing over $1 million a year in business, we would love to directly partner with you and potentially buy your business. So go check out our website, legacypaintholdings.com, and we'll see you in the next video.